Carlton King, the former Scotland and Yard Special Branch and MI6 officer and the author of Black Ops.
I was undercover for Special Branch in a jihadi organisation.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe for free.
My name is Carlton King, and welcome to the Black Spy Podcast, the show that shines a light on the world of secret intelligence, national security, and armed governmental personal protection operations, but actually looks at geopolitics in the round. Today's episode is part 2 of an episode that I started last week.
Right now, I drive a ton because I'm in 4 cities. I drive, I don't know, fast math, kilometers to miles. I drive 300 to 400 miles a year.
Yeah, miles. We use miles here in the UK, so you're good to go. Yeah, 400 miles. Okay.
I drive a ton. I drive a ton. So I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and lately I've been doing, I barely do podcasts anymore. I only pick and choose very specific ones. If I'm not learning something, I don't really listen to it, right? If I'm not being challenged, I don't listen to it. I used to listen to like comical ones. That's rare now. I've really been pushing myself to focus on educational stuff. I jump around a lot. I've been listening to 48 Laws of Power, Henry Kissinger's memoir, Elon Musk. And I was just recently listening to a certain chapter on 48 Laws of Power, which reminded me of during Bill Clinton's height when he was being impeached for the Monica Lewinsky trial. His presidential favorability was at an all-time high.
Absolutely.
And I bring it up because right now, Trump's favorability amongst his own people is at an all-time high, and he's in court 24/7.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? Sometimes it's like, honestly, that whole dumb adage, which is all publicity is good publicity, if you kind of lean into it, sometimes it is. Like the only time I think it isn't is if you kind of get scared. If you kind of play the idiot, like, why is everybody mad? It has a tendency to work out.
I think also, knowing Bill Clinton and having done him a couple of times when he came to the UK, one of the roles which I had was I was what we call protection officer. You're going to call security detail. I used to lead. I was a DI, so I commanded protection teams. And obviously Bill Clinton at the time was a former president of the United States. This is going back some years now. And he came with his Secret Service detail because obviously he's going to get Secret Service for life. And so what we do is, because he comes onto British soil, obviously we're the lead with his Secret Service guys, who we know. So you get to know the principal, the individual you're looking after pretty well. And Bill Clinton is, politics aside, whatever you think of them, in terms of an individual, he's a very charismatic, nice guy. And I think that's necessary. I don't think you can.
Same thing.
I don't think you can get away with everything just by being an individual who leans into it. I think you have to have some charisma. Trump has some charisma. I mean, I'd left the service by the time Trump came in.
You sometimes wonder if just the phrase "idiot savant" fits Trump.
Idiot savant, yeah, potentially. Yeah.
I try to keep politics out of it. I'm just like, you know what? Yeah, that phrase just kind of hits it right on the nose.
I mean, the thing is, you see, it's it's like we had a guy who was a deputy prime minister, and basically what happened was, to put it in a nutshell, he was walking out. It's around about election time, going back some years. He was deputy prime minister to Tony Blair, and whom you will have heard of because he's a guy with a whole load of charisma as well. I know Tony Blair.
Come on, Boris.
Right. And so basically what happened is this guy's walking out. He's deputy. He's called John Prescott. Working class guy, nice guy, made his way to the top, left-wing Labour Party. So Blair needed him as a counterweight to Blair's more right-wing sentiment of the Labour Party. So he walked out and somebody threw some eggs on him.
Yes,
Right, you saw that, yeah? Now, the beauty of what he did is he went over and punched a fella. Right? Went straight in, bang, bang, give him some balls. He was an ex-boxer. So obviously we were given the task, you've got to protect this bloke. Really, to protect him, to prevent him doing something that the Labour Party thought was negative for the electoral perspective. Now, I said to John, I said, listen, best thing you ever did was to punch that guy, because normal people looked at you and said, that's the type of bloke I like. He's a real person.
Not only that, the other person doesn't want to get punched in the face.
Yeah, the real. You see what I'm saying? So I think that sort of, when you've got something, you've got some sort of charisma. Yeah, you can handle the negative much, much, much better. And it's an interesting facet that we see. So interesting that you put that in your business model, because I think that too often now, they've got this culture now whereby you've obviously got in the United States, it's here as well, whereby you're going to be cancelled within 1 second of saying anything. Now, if you're not conscious of that, how does your model work? This is the thing. So it's okay saying, yeah, you can do X, Y, and Z, but generally most people are cancelled. So Trump would have been cancelled, but he's got something that allows him not to be cancelled. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
And I remember CNN asked me to do some work going back, and I'd spoken for him a few times on the show. And what it was when, run up to the election, when Trump said that his mail, if you like this because it's your NSA aspect, his mail, etc., was being listened to. It was being in some way, or his phones were in some way being listened to. So he's been intercepted. Right.
Yeah.
In Trump Tower. So,
I remember.
Do you remember that? Right. Okay. So what CNN wanted to do, I realised, is they wanted to rubbish that. So they said to me, can this be the case? And I said, yeah. He said, because what Trump was doing was half-truth in a sense, saying that President Obama knew about this. Well, what I said was, what will have happened is they'll have been intercepted, because in the Trump Tower, it's nothing secretive or anything. In Trump Tower, they had Russians that were using the tower, and they were being listened into, right? So nothing, because that all came out in the spin. So I said, well, what will have happened is it's what's known as collateral intelligence gathering. If you look back to the old days, let's say 20, 30 years ago, let's say the late 1990s. If you're in the late 1990s and you got a telephone number you needed to listen to, right? What would happen is you'd have to choose how many people from that telephone number you wanted then to listen to in addition to that telephone number, right? And
you could pick one.
Exactly. So somebody like me, a case officer who's looking at it, would say, well, what I'm interested in is, let's say, countering terrorism, whatever. This is the telephone number I'm interested in. So therefore, what I'd like you to do is listen to this. And, that guy, yeah, we got some connections with that guy. He's potential terrorist, so listen to that guy. Now, today, your NSA doesn't need to do any of that. He just listens to everything. And to be fair, that could easily end up at 400,000 or 500,000 people within seconds, right? But it doesn't matter, because they have the algorithms and the capacity to listen to it. So you get a lot of collateral then based on that. And I think that's what was happening to Trump. It was collateral. So he was right. Yeah, it's collateral. But of course, if you pick that up on a person that's running for the election, you're going to have to tell the president, because otherwise that's a big problem, right? So obviously the agency has gone to the president and said, we picked this guy up, probably the FBI in that case, but could be NSA as well. We've picked this happening. And the president would then have to say, okay, keep doing it, or block all those lines that come to this fella who is obviously a prospective president. right?
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah, because I don't want to have to deal with the backflow.
Absolutely. Now, this is where the problem now lies. This is why I bring this up to you. This is why we're on a geopolitical program. The CNN didn't want to hear that.
The phone calls you do want to listen to.
Didn't want to hear that, right? It wanted to hear, Trump's saying something wrong, because they'd already written out what the perspective was. Do you see what I mean? Their perspective of Trump, bad man, he's making this up, bum, 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 bum. When you say, no, he probably isn't, and it's probably done in the right way, he just didn't understand. It's not like the old days of wiretapping when you listen to a specific thing. He just misunderstood the width of the process today, right? So what I'm saying now is media directs its people down a certain avenue based on what its preconceptions are. So why have I gone into this? When you're publishing, are you considering your preconceptions, or are you totally open as to what anybody wants to write?
Oh, no, I'm open because I don't really have, we all have our preconceptions, but I like being challenged. For example, my father was a Jesuit priest for a long time. My stepfather before he came in our lives. And I like to challenge him on religion just to get his boiling. I always say it's good for his blood pressure. And we've gotten to a point now that he realizes I'm not doing it to upset him. I'm doing it because it seems to be the only way I can get him to honestly talk. Because when I get him riled up, he starts talking from a pure honest perspective, right? Mm-hmm. So I actually do like challenges. I like being challenged. I like being pushed. I like the debate. So to me, staying in the same kind of quiet bubble annoys me.
Right.
Right. Like, yes, some days you want to be in your comfort. You want to watch network TV. You want to throw on a BBC show. You want to watch, Luther with Idris Elba, or you want to watch, some CBS television in America. Yes, sometimes. But honestly, most of the time, I want to be challenged. I want to watch something or listen to something or have a debate that pushes me. Yeah. Because it's where I have the most fun.
Right. Interesting. So you do know now you're going to get 1,000 people trying to get their books through you, which are all dodgy and all questionable.
We get them all the time. And we do. I mean, but that's what our Book Puma platform is for. Is we have a monthly membership anywhere from $8 an hour or $8 a month to $300 a month to full service. We call it our concierge program, which is we will walk you through step by step to self-publish instead of you being on your own. There's the hybrid used to be called vanity publishing, where they still kind of hold it. We will literally do everything and hand it back to you, where you still control it all, right?
Okay.
We will do it for/with you, which is nobody really kind of offers that kind of service. We want to get as many great pieces of books, artwork out there into the world. We, on our Blue Handle side, can only do so many. Publishing is hard; it's expensive. But Book Puma was designed and created so that we can impact thousands of writers a year versus a handful under Blue Handle. That's the reason.
So that's a separate company of yours then?
Yes, correct.
So Blue Handle's one company, and the other company.
Yeah. You turn people away at Blue Handle so that you can put them at Book Puma. I was like, no, you're cynical. I created Book Puma so I can find somebody who doesn't know they're awesome, and I can steal them and put them at Blue Handle.
Right. So Blue Handle is kind of your, how would one put it, your properly, fully published,
correct,
syndicated publishing company.
A small indie publisher where we spend all the money. We do it a little bit different than most in that the author will. We ask, like even a big 5 publisher, like Random House or Simon & Schuster, they ask their authors to spend money on publishing, marketing. So like even the New York Times bestsellers, they spend their own money on marketing. JT Ellison knows my editorial director. She, to this day, she says, she spent almost every dollar she had from her first contract on a PR firm in marketing. Had she not done that, she wouldn't have the book deals she has, and we tell people, we will invest in you, but if you're not investing in yourself, it's going to be a short relationship. The way it works with us is it's a contract that says you will get 15% industry standard no matter what. Once we get our investment back, so let's say we invest $5,000 between editing and marketing. Once we get that investment back, it flips to 75-25, meaning the publisher only gets 25% royalty and the author gets 75%.
Okay.
And the reason why is I want the author to want to keep writing and want to keep investing in their own books and want to do a good job. So, because 25% is a heck of a return. So, yeah.
So, and your maxim is presently you are concentrating on fiction. That's your area.
Yes, but I always say if it's a good story and it can sell, I'll listen to anything.
Right. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard that. If you have any idea about where you want to go in terms of a book you might be writing or whatever, be it fiction or non-fiction, but I think it's a bit more difficult for non-fiction, we've got the man right here for you to run to. And I'm sure at the end you'll give me some notes so I can, you'll say it and then I'll put it in my notes subsequently for the podcast. No, so that's brilliant. So we've got this angle of you. Now, talk me a little bit more about your sort of, can I call it an empire in terms of food?
Yeah, I always laugh because I tell people I'm just I'm a general manager who happens to own stores. And it was an easier sell when I only had 3.
Right.
Even 5. And now that I'm building my 11th, even my accountant looks at me and he goes, that doesn't sound right, man. He's like, it just doesn't. He's like, in your head, that may make sense. But he's like, the rest of us look at you like you're just an idiot. And I'm like, that's fair.
So what is your food angle? Is it Italian or what is it? What's the angle?
So Jimmy John's it's a sandwich shop.
Okay.
So I mean, I think internationally, almost everybody's familiar with like Subway.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so the difference between Jimmy John's and Subway is, we're really fast. On average, the sandwiches are made in under 30 seconds. We have a set menu versus like I want a little of this, a little of that. We bake everything fresh. We only use our bread for 3 to 4 hours versus a day and a half. We slice all our veggies fresh in house. We only use them for a day. So we slice our lettuce fresh, slice our vegetables fresh. We slice all our meat in house. So it's just a different approach. That's kind of what we're known for.
So now, again, you know it's a geopolitical show, so I'm coming at you on that. So now, when we look at waste, now if you're using something just for a day, how are you measuring your waste loss in terms of, one day you might have, 5,000 fans going to a football match, be it American or yours or ours. Yeah. So a football match. And the next day you may just have 20 people come into the store. So how are you measuring that, and how can you keep your waste down? I know you want to keep your waste down, so clearly you're not crazy. You don't want to throw good money away. But if you're just keeping it for one day, how are you controlling that?
So it's not necessarily just a day, it's a time frame, right? Like 28 hours, 26 hours. So a lot of what we'll do in my stores that we coach, and I've taught a lot of other owners to do, is to do maybe 60 or 70% of your daily prep, and then do again more in the afternoon. So that way you're doing it twice a day, but you're keeping that freshness up. That gives you the ability to keep it fresh, but not throwing stuff away. So that's one way. The other way is, in my markets, I've been lucky enough to build relationships with charitable companies that have local licensing agreements with the health departments. Mm-hmm. So I actually have, because bread's the hardest one to manage properly, because it takes 2 to 3 hours to even bake. We have to thaw it, proof it, and bake it. Mm-hmm. I can slice a cucumber in 30 seconds. So that's easier to manage. So we actually have companies that'll come around at the end of the night, and they will pick up our bread and then use it for soup kitchens the next morning. in all my markets. Now,
Right, so you're controlling your waste. Yeah, good.
is it a perfect science? No. Do I also teach my guys, if we have too much, to put it next to the dumpster, because every market has a homeless issue and most of our markets have learned to look there? Yes. So like, is it perfect? No. But are we trying to be conscious of the decisions we make? Yes. That's the easiest way I can explain it.
So can I macro that out and get your feelings on the world now?
Yeah.
The way
try to manage as much as we can, because like I said, it's I grew up poor, so I try to remember dumpster diving as a kid. So, and then yes, please extrapolate, because I do this for my guys all the time. So I'd love to hear it from an outsider's perspective.
So looking at food now, and looking at the United States in particular, you have a massive intake of food into your country, be it that you create it yourself on your farms or whatever else, or be it that you ship it into your country. But the waste level is as great. So my question is, because I believe that's unsustainable as we sit now with 8 billion people on this planet. And I do believe probably if we spread out the amount of food we have, that we could actually feed much of the planet if we did it the right way. So the question is, how do you see that being able to be brought into play, taking it to your micro level, but macroing that out? Could you see that now being spread around? I mean, you're getting millions of people coming across your border because they've bought into the perspective, true or not, that life is better in the United States. So it's in your self-interest to actually make life better for them where they came from. Do you see what I mean?
So you're actually, so I actually have some stores in El Paso, which is a border town, and I live it.
Right. Okay.
And I drive through the Southwest, so I'm in Amarillo, Lubbock, New Mexico, and El Paso, and I chuckle when people say, there's not enough room here. And I was like, have you driven through the Southwest? We have dead towns everywhere. Like a little bit of can-do attitude and some organization, and we'll be fine. I think we just have to be a little bit more, again, the inner 4-year-old in all of us. This is my fire truck. Don't touch it. And I think, all joking aside, I think that's what comes out. This is my land. You haven't touched it in 30 years. What are you complaining about? You know what I mean? And that's really what it comes down to. Perfect example. There's this small town, I don't even know the name of it, that I drive through between Amarillo and Santa Fe. It is a town that used probably population 20. That had like
20?
Yeah. It had one cop and like maybe a store and a church. And over the 8 years that I've driven through it, it's probably up to like 200 now.
Yeah.
And I can tell you it has grown from immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
They now have cattle and houses are being built. And I now joke with the police officer that has pulled me over before in the past. I drive really slow through there. And one time I was speeding, not egregiously, but like he pulled me over once. He's like, you always slow down. So now I mess with him when I go through town. Like I'll go 5 miles an hour if he's behind me and drive him nuts. We occasionally talk. And I mean, as you can tell from our conversation, I can talk with anybody. And so I've gotten to know this town, and we've had these conversations. And if you just are willing to make smart decisions, like a lot of the laws we have, again, because I have restaurants in different cities, on how I have to manage food, I understand that we have to have safe food, right, in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
We also don't share information between cities. I know this because a guy who I've gotten to know created a website that shares information about foodborne illness. It's called iwaspoisoned.com.
Right. Interesting.
He's not even from the U.S. He used to be the former vice president of Morgan Stanley. And he was in New York, and he realized, wait, so I got sick in Manhattan, and you didn't realize that every restaurant or everybody who bought from this supplier in every single borough was getting sick because, Manhattan didn't talk to this Queens. Because because they just don't talk to each other. Even though it's not that hard to share information, they just don't talk to each other.
Incredible.
And even he knew this issue. So because even on that level, they aren't communicating, right? So the issue is so systemic that we have these rules and laws where people just aren't even talking. That I feel like if we were to, you could, I think, let back some of the regulation if you were to communicate better, right? Because you could have programs that were a restaurant or a grocery store who has certain shelf life issues on produce were to work with a soup kitchen. Hey, I've got or give them a tax credit, right? Hey, I've got $2,000 worth of produce that's about to go in 2 days, and I'm going to donate it to the soup kitchen. You think that grocery chain wouldn't want the write-off to you know what I mean? Like, of course they would.
Yeah.
But nobody wants to do the communication on it. And that's really what it comes down to. And I was just talking to my dad about this and other people. Nobody wants to talk about the conversations that aren't sexy, like infrastructure.
Absolutely.
Right. Because it doesn't affect you for 5 to 7 years. And then when they are working on the road, it ticks you off. Right.
Yeah.
Even though it needs to be fixed, it bothers you. So and when it bothers you, what is it? It's the inner 4-year-old mad that mom and dad took toys from you because they had to clean them because they were dirty because you had the flu. Right. Like it all goes back to that toddler in you that just is throwing a tantrum. Like,
I'm actually jumping out of your life now again into the United States life. I just did a show about the United States last week, and I find it incredible, and I don't know what American citizens think, that I used to work, disclaimer, I used to work for the US military many, many years ago. I find it incredible that the United States is willing to spend literally $1 trillion a year on its military, which is now about 10 times more than more than the next 10 countries below it put together. So that includes all the budget for your military each year. The US, $1 trillion is more than the next 10 countries a year, which is what you spend on your military, which is more than the next 10 countries below you. So if you look at China, you look at Russia, you look at the United Kingdom, you look at Saudi Arabia, you look at Israel, you look at France, you look at Germany, all of those put together don't reach your trillion every year, right? All the military expenditure.
We do that for employment purposes. We do that for,
This is my question. Why do you think you do it? This is my big question to you. When, and because you just mentioned infrastructure, you've let your infrastructure go. You've got people who can't get your teeth done or whatever.
The amount of things we could fix. Like the amount of tanks we have in the Arizona desert. I grew up in Detroit, right? So, they build a lot of tanks out there. I had friends when I was in my 20s who, there was one of them who it was her job to go test the tanks once a year to make sure they still worked. Handful of people who would literally, they had the keys to start them. Like that was her job. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands of tanks that just sat there.
Yeah.
Hundreds of millions of dollars worth of tanks just unused.
Yeah.
And I wonder what that could do to our school system. I wonder what that could do to, and it's the military complex, right? And it's
correct. You spoke about Eisenhower. That's what he said. Military industrial complex. In fact, he said military industrial and congressional complex. That's what he actually said. He dropped Congress because he was frightened of putting it in. But what he was saying is the Congress is the one that provides the monies for this, and the congressmen and women, I guess you could read for that, senators as well, need to be re-elected. So they will provide the money because it aids them get re-elected. And of course, he didn't say this, but they're clearly kickbacks. Because I just saw one of your senators leave the other day, went in to be a senator with no money, came out when she died with literally tens of millions.
Well, I think it's not just that. I think it's also the simplicity of, for example, I'm in Amarillo, and they have Bell Helicopter, right?
Yep.
So That's a huge employer here. So when you have these towns all over the country, right? What happens when you shut down a base? What happens when you shut down?
Absolutely.
So I do like seeing the U.S. Reinvesting in chips. I mean, and I hate Amazon, but I get it. Meaning like these warehouses and these other factories, Tesla, we outsourced so many manufacturing jobs for so long. The only thing you were manufacturing was military.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right.
So I think at this point, the only thing you can replace it with is other manufacturing.
But that's the point. What I'm trying to say is, I guess, it's not beyond the wit of your congressmen and women and industrial men and women and senators to be able to say we need to come off a war footing and actually produce something that we sell to people. You do superbly. And don't get me wrong, this is not just because we have got the same. We do it in the city of London, banking, okay? But unfortunately, they're doing banking that's not doing anything other than gambling. You know, they gamble on percentages. They're not creating anything. And we've gone down the same avenue as you in terms of our military. We have a lot of our scientists in military because it's an easy way to look powerful on the world stage. But in reality, it's a backward process. So when you look at the two countries that supposedly lost the Second World War, Germany and Japan, because they weren't allowed to put monies in their military, they put their monies into civil products.
Exactly.
And those civil products they sell all around the world.
I was having this conversation with my son not that long ago. He's like, how come Japan and Korea and these countries look like they have so much cool stuff? And I go, well, for starters, we blew them off the face of the planet. I was like, and then they weren't allowed to spend money on a lot of things. They had to put it elsewhere.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think, you're the biggest person that I know of the United States because obviously you're number one. The problem is you perceive you're not any longer becoming number one or still not number one because China probably is the number one economically now. So there's a choice now, isn't there, for the US? And I just wonder where you sit on it, is to accept that and say, let's work hand in hand, or as it is now, people screaming out China this, China that, China the other. Now, I look at geopolitics in the round. It was my job to do that in a sense, And when I look at China, and I was on the Chinese section once, I see a country which has 1.5 billion people. If it went actually the way I thought it was going to go in the 80s, if they didn't bring in the one-child policy, there'd have been 3 billion people by now, but they did bring in the one-child policy.
Yeah, that was a very weird decision, right?
Well, it was, but I guess they had to do it. I guess they figured and looked, if we keep going, we'll be 3 billion people. We won't be able to feed them. Because if you think back, when I was on the Chinese section, I'm talking like 80s.
You look at India and the issues they have.
Correct. There you go. There you go. And growing and growing. Now it's the most populated country in the world now, India. Right? So the Chinese made this decision. Now, there are downsides to every decision you make, and there are upsides. The downside is that, I used to go to China a lot, is that every person there, every kid there is a little prince or princess, right? Because they're just one of them, right? So they get that. I mean, you could have more children, you just wouldn't get any state benefits. So it was possible. You couldn't work for the state, but you wouldn't get state benefits, and you could have more than one. But if you wanted any state benefit, which most people do get, because it's in name, I guess, a communist country. I call it state capitalism, to be fair. But in name, a communist country, you get looked after.
Really a capitalistic or democratic country. It's a republic, but we don't ever want to admit it.
Yeah, exactly. So, exactly. So this is the game we all play. But what I noticed from them is they had 5-10-year plans, which they brought into being. And they didn't go and whack a whole load of money into their military. They've got one base outside of China, and that's in Djibouti. Other than that, there isn't a base. You've got 800 outside the United States. That's outside of what we used to call, when I was looking for your corners,
the world's military.
Yeah. Now, okay, it gives you power in some ways, but it also drags from you. It drags from you. And it also lends some people to think, if we've got this, we better use it. And that then is dangerous for the world.
I can agree with that. You become, well, speaking from somebody who's in 4 cities for work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have to go check on it because I haven't been there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this is where the problem
lies. The military base and wanting to shoot somebody. Like I'm not saying that. But I am. The thought crosses your mind that, well, I'm spending money on this thing. I got to go check on it. Like, yeah.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. I've taken up a lot of your time, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. So if you need to cut and run, do tell me, because I don't know if you know, Charles.
I'm multitasking right now, man. I'm doing accounting while we're doing this.
All right, so we done. No, nice one, because we've done an hour 15. But I'm interested on your, let's say the last question. I'm interested on your view on these border towns, because one of the things that I've noticed, because I often say best of your news and read a lot of your stuff, etc., and around the world I do anyway. So, but looking at that, I've noticed there's now becoming a situation where the federal government and the state governments are coming into loggerheads based on your southern borders now, where Texas, I know you're living in Texas, where the governors put up barbed wire and the federal government saying, no, we're going to drag it down. And then 15, or was it 25 other governors said, no, we're going to help him by sending our National Guard. I mean, this is getting to be quite...
It's an election year. That's all it is.
You don't think there's anything more than that? You think it's just that?
It's all propagating BS. So,
okay.
So the one thing that happens all the time in Texas, so Texas is the only state in the U.S. that technically is voluntarily part of the union. They can technically leave with I think it's 75% vote of the.
Right. Okay. A plebiscite. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
So if they ever wanted to, granted, again, getting 3 people to agree on a pizza, getting 70% of a population, it's not going to be that easy, right? So let's be honest. If what it really comes down to is, look at what happened during the. I don't know if you're familiar with. Was it 2 winters ago when the state of Texas pretty much froze over?
Yeah.
So the way the state of Texas is designed, it's the only state that cannot bring power in. It can only bring power out because it has a surplus of energy.
I didn't know that.
When their grid froze up because of the way it's designed and they had issues, they couldn't bring anything in to supplement even for a day.
Right. Interesting.
Now, it hasn't happened in 30 years.
So it won't happen again. I hear what you're saying.
May happen again for 2 days, again in 30, right? So do you spend millions and millions and millions of dollars for something that'll happen for 1 or 2 days in the next 30? Probably not, right? I get it. But that's kind of where they're at. So Governor Abbott is kind of he's mad that God took his legs. I know it's a rude thing to say, but he makes decisions that you can just tell the dude's an angry man. He just is. And to sit there and be like, this is my land. You came here illegally. First of all, this country was built on immigrants.
Absolutely. The only people there is the Native American, and they're struggling. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's just like the audacity, the rude, and then to sit there and help another governor essentially commit federal crimes and send people and commit human trafficking and tell people, oh no, we're just gonna send you over here and get you job placements, and you're sending people up in the dead of winter to Connecticut and New York and Chicago, and
anywhere but my backyard.
Yeah, and I'm like, dude, you can't send somebody from Texas when it's 80 degrees in the winter to somewhere where it's -10 without their knowing, and I'm just like, then you're having this conversation with people and they're like, well, it's to prove a point. And I go, with someone's life?
Yeah.
I'm like, is the part that you keep leaving out. You are making a political point with someone's life. I was like, so I'm going to prove a point with your life. Since you don't like what's going on in China, I'm going to take you and all your friends and I'm going to fly you to China and drop you off in China in Wuhan. Okay, good luck.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm like, well, how come it's okay and it's that kid throwing a tantrum, and In El Paso, it's not that bad. I've seen a few surges of people coming across the border. It gets cleaned up pretty quickly, meaning there's a bunch of organizations that work to help people. You see like a day or two of a couple hundred people, and before you know it, it's gone. My understanding, though, it's the smaller towns like Eagle Pass that are like 200-town people that are getting flooded. The problem is we had the border shut for 2 years.
Yeah.
And now that it's open, all those people that had been sitting and waiting are trying to get through.
And they're also thinking, when will be the next time it's closed? So let's get in now.
Exactly. And the other side of it that nobody wants to talk about is, the political side. They say is, Biden opened the border. No, he didn't. The expiration of the closed border that was put in place during COVID by Trump expired. Nobody opened it. It expired. And to fix it and or come to terms and have new legislation, no one will agree upon. And the current policy that was agreed upon was worked on by both sides, was about to be signed, and then Trump came out and said, don't sign it. And now people are literally saying, well, I haven't read it, but if Trump doesn't agree with it, we're not signing it.
We're not signing it, yeah, because he may get it, yeah. You see, so finally then, with that perspective, I mean, I was in Texas, big old place. I didn't realize how big it was. I knew it was big because obviously it's big. It's a Lone Star State, big on the map. When you're actually in it, you think to yourself, bloody hell, it is big. Yeah. So I was in there working with the Texas Rangers and some locals. So it was quite interesting. Now,
met more people than bad, and I feel like honestly it's the bad that make it.
Yeah, no, I didn't dislike it, but what there's some narrative elements, but what I did not like from my perspective is this idea that Joe Soap can walk around with a rifle and a sidearm, and then people wonder why drunken people shoot each other. That's the bit I don't kind of understand.
You and I are on the same page with that one.
Can you explain it? Can you explain the concept to me, though?
In the middle, right? Like, okay, if you say you need a gun to protect yourself, cool. I'm like, then get rid of sidearms, and you have to have old-fashioned Winchester rifle that's got 2 shots on it, and that's it. And it takes a good couple of minutes to reload. That's it. That's what you get. And everybody knows you have it because it's 4 feet long. No more hidden sidearm, right? Like. And it takes 17 weeks to figure out if you're nuts or not before you get one. And they're like, well, it's right to bear arms. No, that's not what that means. That's not what it means. Like, and that the other side that always cracks me up is, I always like to point out to people who love guns is when Obama was president, the NRA would come out all the time and say Obama was taking your guns. The dude signed more legislation in favor of guns than any other president in history. But whenever the NRA and the right wing came out and said he's taking your guns, gun sales would go up.
Sales would go absolutely. You're right. Totally.
If you're going to be in favor of guns, say you're in favor of guns. Just don't be an idiot in favor of guns. That's all I ask.
Yeah. I mean, this is quite interesting because I obviously, look, I'm from a country where practically every gun's illegal. All
the countries that have made them illegal, it's amazing how few shootings there are, right?
I mean, don't get me wrong, we have stabbings, okay? People stab each other.
Yeah, but the mass things are a little bit different.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right?
Because if I have a basically an assault rifle, because that's what basically the folk were knocking around with, assault rifle, I can lay down a whole load of people, a lot different to you stabbing people with a knife. That's for sure. Yeah. So the reality is that more people get killed. And then you've got to ask yourself, what state, what country wants that? And that's why I ask often to my American friends, like I'm just asking you, how is that meant
when I ask people, like, why, you know what I mean? Like, why do you need it? Honestly, what it comes down to, it's a generational thing. I've almost never met somebody who loves a gun who didn't get handed a gun from their grandpa or their dad. Almost never.
Gotcha.
So it's a generational thing. Well, this is the way it is in my house. It's the way it's always been. Like, seriously, that's what it is. And that's a hard thing to break, right?
Yeah.
When you're talking generation after generation after generation,
yeah,
you're at some point, you just kind of have to put your foot in the ground and know you're going to lose that battle, right? And you're just going to have to eat it and make the decision. And that's a hard call. And I think this is also a country right now that's going through a time where we're trying to erase civil rights. I mean, Texas right now they're having arguments, luckily not good, like it's not working because people are standing up. They're trying to erase anybody of color from civil rights teaching, like in school.
Absolutely. Yeah. Heard it. I've heard it. It's frightening.
I mean, you saw me. I'm a white dude. My son's favorite historical figure is Martin Luther King. We took our kids on a trip to New Orleans. We stopped in Memphis. We went to the Civil Rights Museum. We were there for 2 hours, and I was like, holy shit, we should have been here for 6. We needed more time. Like, we have tried really hard to teach our kids. My mom did this, though, which is know your place in the world you're in, understand what it is to be different, and know that you're going to have to stand up for other people, right? Like, just know that. And I've tried to do the same thing with my kids. Yeah. And, I literally
it's not necessarily easy, though, is it? It's not necessarily easy.
Again, similar to the gun thing, because it was kind of handed down to me.
Handed down, exactly.
It's not as hard. But, like, I had this conversation with my dad who doesn't see things, I guess, the same way. And I was explaining to him, like, what's going on in Texas and Florida, how they're trying to remove these things. And he's like, I don't see it that way. And I'm like, huh? And he's like, yeah, I don't believe it. I'm like, literally, there's live recordings at the state level in the legislature of these arguments going on. Yeah, I don't see it going. Like, how do you not believe that?
This is the power of politics, my friend, and the power of what really can best be called propaganda. It's very difficult to once you've put it out, it's very difficult to drag it back. Now, oftentimes a politician utilizes it because he or she believes that's the best way for the road ahead, but they only think short term. They don't see what's going on down that road if you carry on with this process. And we could have talked about Palestine, which is a great example of that as we sit right now. But unfortunately, my good friend,
a little bit, man, just reach out. Tell me the next time you're available.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to have you back on because I tell you what, Charles, it's been great talking to you. We've spoken about your books. We've talking about your empire. I'm allowed to say that, I know, your empire. And we've spoken about how a normal guy, everyday person can, if they direct themselves correctly, make their way forward. And that, to me, has been of the utmost importance. Charles, thank you very much for being on the show today. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we fire off to my listeners?
Just if you do want to write a book and you don't know where to start, Book Puma Edit, Book Puma Live. Find us on social media. Find us on our website. I'm Charles, the number 3 hats on all social media platforms. CHARLES 3 hats. Feel free to troll me, give me heck. I love a challenge. And at the end of the day, there's a million different personalities, but I always say we're all kind of the same person. We want to be loved, we want to be appreciated, and we want to be told that it's going to be okay. And it's okay if you believe something a little bit different, and if your choices are a little bit different, because we can all get through the day. That's all it is.
And on that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you again next week.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening And don't forget to subscribe for free.
Here is a working class spy telling his stories, the secrets, the lives of spies. Feel free to message Carlton King on all socials and give this show 5 stars on Apple iTunes and subscribe so you never miss a single episode. For your ears only.
More than a quarter of a century, I was a member of Her Majesty's Secret Intelligence Service.